March 16th, 2008, an indie game made by developer Mortis Ghost would be published, which would go on to become a cult classic and one of the most influential RPGs of the modern age. Perhaps its biggest claim to fame being the inspiration it gave to the genocide route in Undertale and by extension the weird route in Deltarune, which I already covered in a previous video. The game would take a different approach to the whole JRPG format, and by extension, it would incorporate meta aspects into its narrative. In addition to the meta-narratives though, it also forces the player to confront an uncomfortable truth about their mission in the game. There's a very apparent dark side to everything, and as the game goes on, you start to wonder if you're really the hero of this story. This game, made by Mortis Ghost, is titled Off. In terms of writing, Off as a game really intrigues me. It has some of the most unique world building out of any JRPG I've ever played or JRPG style game. There's a very distinct, unnerving, palpable, but also just very unique atmosphere to this game in both the original and the remake. The symbolism has a good bit to delve into, the characters are all well written, and the slow revelation throughout the game as you play it is genuinely one of the best I've ever seen. As such, it's little wonder why this game picked up as much popularity as it did. Mortis Ghost, as a game developer, truly does know what he's doing when it comes to the writing. In this video, I intend to dive into the writing of Off, its story and chronological order, all the present themes in the writing, possible symbolism, a little bit of speculation, and ultimately how the game really does this revelation so well. I'm not really targeted on one particular thing with the writing, I just want to delve into it overall and the stuff that I think is really fascinating. I can't guarantee that my analysis will be perfect, but I'll do my best. I want to note real quick, by the way, that I won't really be covering the new bosses in the remake, and in addition, all of my footage is from the remake. However, the remake doesn't have huge visual alterations outside the UI. I'll also make sure to use the soundtracks from both versions of the game because both are equally fantastic in my opinion. And without further ado, let's delve into this. Let us dive into Mortis Ghost's bizarre masterpiece. As soon as you hit New Game, you're immediately greeted with a warning that certain scenes in this game may prove shocking to an unwarned public, or maybe not. To my knowledge, it's never exactly confirmed why this warning is here, but it definitely makes for a very eerie introduction to the game. You're then asked to identify yourself as well as your gender before you're assigned to a being called the Batter. You're told that the Batter is on a mission and he needs your aid, and for more information, seek after a character known as the Judge. As the title of the game fades into view, you're then dropped into Zone 0 after the minimal introduction. At first, everything's silent. Eerily silent. The game already shows off its very unique art style with colored backgrounds and simplistic graphics as well as colorless characters that pop against the vibrant backgrounds. The pixel art of the game is very solid overall, and along with that, all of the dialogue portraits have a very distinct style to them I can't really pinpoint. After this very brief little tutorial, you then enter Zone 0 proper. Our first sight upon entry into this serene new place is the judge. The judge assumes that we're just an illusion created by his imagination since, after all, there's no other living beings in Zone Zero. The judge asks for our name, not the batter's. Ours. This is the first instance of the whole meta storytelling thing that I was talking about. Right from the get-go, there's no speculation. The game establishes clearly that the batter and the player are separate entities. The judge is a fairly welcoming, albeit kind of Shakespearean introduction, and along with that he agrees to teach us the basics of combat. By this point the judge realizes too that we and the batter are not just illusions created by his imagination, we're actually there with him. Nevertheless, the combat tutorial commences. The combat system in OFF differs significantly between the original and the remake of the game. However, out of my own personal preference, I'll cover the remake's combat. It's a fairly standard turn-based RPG system with a bit of a twist. Instead of just going, the player has a turn and then the enemy, turns are based on each character's gauges. They act as sort of timers, and when the gauge fills up, it's then that character's turn, whether they're an enemy or the player. Certain enemies have differing speeds for their gauges, and so it necessitates that you have to formulate a strategy around their speed. Additionally, there are some moments where the batter gets a unique yellow flame to his gauge and he's able to attack with a critical hit. This critical hit does a considerably larger amount of damage, and it applies to the competences as well. Competences are basically this game's version of special attacks. Each competence costs CC, or competence points. Each competence has its own different effect, but they all largely have the same visuals. The visuals of combat are fairly bare bones, but they get the job done, I guess. Admittedly, the combat of this game isn't really its specialty, but I do still kind of like it. I like the way you have to formulate a strategy based on the enemy's speed, and in addition, the different speeds at which the gauges fill actually make each enemy and boss feel distinct, unlike in the original. Overall, the combat's pretty straightforward, however there's one really interesting detail I noticed. Every single time a battle begins, instead of saying something like battle begins or X enemy approaches, the message that shows up on screen is purification in progress. Along with this, every time you win a battle, the message says adversaries purified. This is a pretty cold and detached way of describing the combat encounters. However, at this stage of the game, it's not really specified what purification actually is or what it entails. As such, it's basically up to your guess what the purification actually is right now. When you're done with the combat tutorial, or if you just refuse it outright, the judge takes you over into the one building in Zone Zero. This is where you're introduced to the next big thing about OFF, the puzzles. The ones you're introduced to here are just pretty simple keypad puzzles where you have to copy the numbers down onto keypads, but given that this is literally the start of the game, I'm okay with that. Some of the puzzles can get pretty confusing later on, so you'll probably want to have something like Notepad opened in the background in case you need it. After your small little tutorial, there's just one room left in Zone Zero, the red save point room. Red save points in OFF function a little differently from the regular save points in the game. While you can save your game at them, they also act as a way for you to travel back to the nothingness. The nothingness, if you're unfamiliar, basically serves as the world map for OFF, connecting all of the different zones. When you return to the nothingness, you're then able to travel between the zones. With everything having been said, that's the end of the tutorial area Zone Zero, which means now we can move on to our first proper zone in the game. The batter steps forth into the pouring rain. The strange colored ocean of Zone 1 shimmers in contrast with the green landscape. Here we're introduced to the Elsen, the inhabitants of Off's world, and with it a tramway that takes us to our first stop in Zone 1, Damien. The smoke mines of Damien are a strange place. All of the workers seem to have bags under their eyes just like all of the other Elsen, and seem to just be tired from excess labor. The first worker questions the batter on why he's even there, and the batter says that he's being controlled by you, the player. The worker immediately assumes you must be part of management and gives you your first little bit of insight into the world of Off. This is our first taste of Mortis Ghost's surreal style of world building. Here in the smoke mines of Damien, they do mine ores, but the ores aren't what they're seeking to collect. Instead, what they're trying to do is free all of the clouds of smoke trapped behind the ore. They then package up that smoke in plastic bottles, which is shipped off to the other zones. The rest of it floats up to the sky and forms the air that the Elsen breathe. As such, smoke becomes solidified as being among the four elements of Off's world, because without smoke, there'd be no air for the people to breathe. There's some stuff to unpack here. First of all, the fact that the Elsen breathe in smoke instead of regular air implies that they may be artificial in some way. I mean, after all, the smoke of industry is toxic for almost everything that's alive, so inhaling large amounts of it would surely kill something, but the Elsen need the smoke to breathe. I also personally find it a little odd that they have to ship some of it off to the other zones. It's never exactly stated how far apart each of the zones are, but under normal circumstances, you would think that it forming the atmosphere of the world would make it so that it wouldn't have to be shipped off to the other zones. However, maybe the other zones are just that far away, it's never exactly confirmed. This is the first of many things that make all of the other zones dependent fully on Zone 1 for their resources. And in addition, it helps establish the theme of the consequences of industry that's present throughout Off's world. Here it's especially apparent seeing as the people of Off's world have to literally mine for and excavate that or import the air they breathe in. The air we breathe in is very readily available to us. All we have to do really is just go to a place that isn't 100% airtight sealed and we'll be able to breathe just fine, as long as you're not living in Norilsk. In Off's world, that isn't the case. People have to work to be able to earn the right to breathe. As such, they're fully dependent on industry in that regard, and it's not the only regard they're dependent on industry for, but we'll get to that when we talk about the other elements. When finished with this explanation as to what the smoke mines of Damien are for, the worker stumbles over his words before the batter interrupts him, demanding to know, where are the impure spirits? This highlights something about the batter's character overall. His complete apathy and detachment from everything that's happening. We're trying to make sense of the strange thing we were just told about how the characters in Off get the air they breathe, while the batter just completely does not care. He makes it clear that he's only in this world to complete his mission. He's not here to have a fun little ride. He's only here to see through to his goals, and that's it. This is reinforced throughout the rest of the game too. The batter constantly puts up a stoic front. It's very seldom that he expresses any emotion at all in any instance. He shows a complete disinterest in anything happening in the world of Off. He only cares when it pertains to the goal he's trying to achieve, the purification of the world. The worker informs us that there's a bunch of dangerous specters that have been found down in the mines. For those unfamiliar, specters are basically the main enemy type found in Off. They're pretty much just like ghosts, they're weak to metal, that's basically all there is to them. At least for now. They've evidently become a real problem throughout the world of Off, especially in Zone 1. But when we go into the Annex Tunnel to try and confront the leader of the Spectres, we're instead met with the Judge, who offers us a little something known as Add-on Alpha. Add-ons are basically objects that function as this game's version of other party members. The batter is of course the leader of the group, and the add-ons are like his allies. Each add-on has its own distinct style of attack and moves, so they're pretty useful. Add-on Alpha, in particular, specializes in attacks that can inflict status effects on the enemies, which can do anything from slowing them down, making them unable to attack for a bit, gradually draining their health, etc. As such, it's really helpful in combat settings. Aside from that, though, its class type listed in the menu is also very intriguing. It's listed as, quote, Father. Nevertheless, after this, we gain access to the main part of Damien, and with that, we get our first non-tutorial combat encounter in the game. I just want to put this out there that I will always love the original game's battle music, Pepper Steak, which you actually heard towards the beginning of this video when it was showing clips from the game's trailer. With that said, though, the remake's battle theme for Zone 1, you know what? Describing it is not going to do this piece justice. Just take a listen for yourself. This specific battle theme has a very jazzy, roaring 20s type vibe to it, and honestly, I love it. It's genuinely among the best video game tracks out of any turn-based RPG I've played, let alone off. It's honestly such a jam, to the point where a lot of times I purposefully drag out fights in Zone 1 just so I can keep listening to this music. Eventually though, you'll find a blocked off path with a ladder to its side that leads up and out of the mines. Above the mines is the next workstation, the metal farmsteads of Pentel. Here, instead of mining smoke from the earth, the people here bisect cows in order to harvest the chunks of metal inside. The purer, more refined chunks are then used to make various tools and other objects. The rest of it ends up getting discarded and forms the ground the people walk on, thus making it one of the 4 essential elements. Once again, we're presented with the consequences of industry in Off's world. The people have to literally sacrifice livestock in order to be able to walk on the earth. It's even more surreal seeing as, well, ground is bound to exist basically anywhere where there's civilization, but not here. They have to create the ground they walk on. Once again, showing how they essentially need industry now in order to be able to have basic survival stuff. In addition, this ground they're walking on is quite literally built from the desecration of nature, the bisection of the carcasses. You may have also noticed by now just how much the world of Off seems to lack joy. All of the NPCs we interact with are emotionless, and if they are emotional, chances are they're most likely stressed out about something. In this case, the workers here are stressing out because the Queen's inspector is going to show up and the barn is full of specters. You know what that means. It's purification time. Once that's finished, though, then it's finally time to get introduced to the Queen's inspector and the guardian of Zone 1, Deaden. Pretty much right away we can get an idea as to why the worker we talked to was so nervous about Deaden showing up. From the moment he shows up, he's angry, aggressive, and hostile to the worker. Anytime the worker tries to speak up, Deaden immediately shuts it down. He undermines everybody else, and dismisses the batter as just being some sort of arrogant man. Which, to be fair, by this point the batter does seem to be pretty arrogant, but still. It reveals a lot about Deaden's character and just how jaded he's become. It makes you wonder if maybe there was a time where he wasn't like this. What must have happened to him to make him this way? It's never exactly stated for sure, but it's definitely interesting to think about. Something I find to be quite odd, though, is how the batter immediately assumes that Deaden must be involved with the Spectres in some way, despite there being no real evidence to support this. And before even speaking to Deaden yet, the batter immediately decides that he has to destroy him. You'll then have to go back to the smoke mines and then navigate a dark maze part of the area where meeting a dead end will result in a battle. It sounds like it would be really annoying, and admittedly it can be pretty confusing to navigate, but overall it's not that bad. When you reach the next save point, you'll then meet another new character, Zachary. Zachary serves as the traveling merchant of this game. Additionally, he immediately opens up with a lot of meta commentary, and displays full knowledge that he's in a video game, making him one of the only characters to do so. Zachary is actually a pretty good merchant, and a lot of the stuff he offers is really useful, but that makes sense seeing as he's literally the only one that shows up in the game. Past Zachary is the third workstation of Zone 1, the plastic administrations of Shachihata. Here, the workers fill out a bunch of forms and then forward them to the couriers. In exchange, the couriers will then give them shipments full of plastic, which is then used to make everyday objects. In addition to that, though, plastic in liquid form also flows and forms the oceans of the world, thus cementing its place as one of the 4 essential elements. Admittedly, I'm not too sure what the significance of filling out the forms for the plastic is, but I digress. This information even furthers the bizarre feel of Off's world. Plastic is very clearly a pollutant in our world. Yes, it's used to make a lot of the objects we need, but plastic also pollutes our oceans. In Off's world, it's different. In this world, instead of water filling the oceans, it's liquid plastic. Almost like a metaphor for how our oceans are becoming filled more and more with plastic, to the point where they might as well be plastic in the far future. Once again, it's a pretty clever reflection at the damage humanity has done to the environment with industry. Up on the roof, you can also find the judge yet again, who will be willing to give you a hint for the next puzzle. This next puzzle involves paying very close attention to NPC dialogue, specifically on the ground floor. All of the workers are so caught up in their work that if you try to talk to them, they'll only tell you the forum number and stamp number they're currently filling out. In one of the office rooms, though, all of the forum numbers will be the exact same. In that room, you'll have to pay close attention to what the stamp number is specifically. Whatever stamp number it ends up being, it'll be the code you need to put into the elevator. This is a pretty solid puzzle in my opinion. It's not so easy that it ends up just being a nothing burger, and it makes you have to actually think, but at the same time it's not so complicated that a new player is unlikely to figure it out. Something really strange happens though when we get our first enemy encounter. At first, we see someone there who just says that he's scared, and then it immediately thrusts you into a battle. In the battle menu, he looks like a fairly standard enemy, but in the overworld, he's still just a regular humanoid sprite. Even the batter notices just how strange this is. This is also a pretty early red flag as to what we're really doing in our mission. It makes you wonder if maybe the guy transformed when the battle began, then transformed back when it ended, or if he even transformed at all. This is even further reinforced when later on, when we've cracked the area's code and give it to one Elson blocking the way to Deaden, he straight up gets scared and tells us that he doesn't want to die. With context that's later established in the game, this interaction becomes one of the most chilling ones in my opinion. But I'm getting ahead of myself, we'll save all of this for later. All that matters for us right now is that now that we've defeated this guard, the way to Deaden's office is open and we can confront him. With this, we're able to actually ascertain more about Deden's character, and specifically how he partially parallels the Batter. Notice how just like the Batter immediately did upon hearing of him, Deden, upon meeting the Batter, immediately resorts to threats of violence. He immediately assumes that he's involved with the Spectres. But while the Batter is more calm and composed in his threats of violence, Deden is rash, angry, and infuriated with him. And yet despite that, both of them still share the aspect that they'll immediately resort to violence in some situations to get things done. After this, you're able to finally go to Alma, and after solving a poster puzzle, which, I'm gonna be honest, I hate this puzzle, it's just really annoying for me. If you don't have a photographic memory and you don't take a picture, you're basically screwed. After this admittedly pretty annoying puzzle, you'll then enter the fourth and final workstation of Zone 1, the Meat Fountains of Alma. Alma is by far the most simplistic workstation in Zone 1. The only duty of the workers here pretty much consists of catching the meat from the fountains in plastic bottles before they overflow. Once the liquid meat is caught in the bottles, then it's shipped off to the other zones as well as throughout the rest of Zone 1 for people to consume. It seems to be the one and only food source throughout Off, hence making it a very essential element, one of the 4 essential elements, because without meat, well, everybody would starve to death. Admittedly though, I can't really find any symbolism with this one to derive, sorry. The Batter then states he's here to liberate the world from evil before the worker we talk to then asks to be liberated and then a battle commences. In the interest of time, I'm going to be skipping past most of the puzzles from this point on in the zone. The only one I really want to focus on is the last one, the Flesh Maze. It's a very Lost Woods-esque puzzle where basically you have to follow where the music gets louder in order to progress. If you go the wrong way, it sends you back to the beginning. Normally I'm not a huge fan of Lost Woods type sections, but this one's pretty decent because the whole gimmick of it is fairly easy to figure out. I also just really like the design of the maze itself. The purple color of the walls and floors contrasts very nicely with the vibrant red meat flowing through the area. Plus, the maze itself is actually pretty short, which means it's not all that confusing to figure out on your first time. Eventually though, when you reach the end, it finally leads you to the final bit of the zone, your confrontation with Deden. And so begins the game's first boss battle. As the first boss, Deden is a force to be reckoned with in the early game. He does quite a lot of damage to your party, and his health bar is madness for this early in the game. Deden's whole boss fight revolves around one clock used in the fight. Each time the hour hand moves to a brand new hour, it'll become one of the members' turns to act, whether it's Deden himself or one of your party members. Deden can also summon text box enemies. These ones are pretty basic and easy to deal with, but they can prove to be overwhelming when combined with Deden's attacks. Admittedly, just like the regular battles, the boss fights in Off really don't distinguish themselves very good in my opinion. The different timings make them a little bit more distinct, sure, but the gameplay isn't really the highlight for me. In terms of atmosphere though, this fight is absolutely perfect in my eyes. Additionally, Deden's dialogue at the beginning of the fight helps illustrate a bit of a sadistic side to the Batter. It's one of the few times where the Batter is described to be smiling as he enters the fight. I personally picture this as the Batter having a more demented grin, like he's taking joy in enacting violence on Deden. The fight only gets faster and faster in its pacing as the time goes on. cementing it as one of the more challenging in the game for me. However, eventually, with enough strategy and perseverance, you can take down Deaden and win the fight. After seeing Deaden's bloodied carcass fade away, we're then taken to a short intermission with the right now unnamed young child. All the child says is that didn't start well, whatever that means. And with that, Zone 2 has now been unlocked.